Today, I want to talk about forgiveness. This topic was inspired recently by a response that I got to a comment I made on another vlogger's short that they posted the other day. And I've spent some time thinking about the response and my subsequent response. And it was a good exchange. It was a thought-provoking exchange. It was brief. I also had a reminder recently of what it means to forgive. Thank you so much for joining me on Whole Wellness with Ann. I'm out for an afternoon stroll, and it has been so cloudy the last several days in the area where I live. They have called for part sunshine for many days in a row, and for every one of those many days we have not seen a break in the clouds and the gloom. So it's kind of getting old, and I hope you guys don't mind that I'm taking you along on my walk while I do this video. I have to get outside and get fresh air and get my exercise, or the doom and gloom and clouds really gets to me. And I'm even taking vitamin supplements, like vitamin D and stuff like that, but I find that my mood is still affected quite a bit by the lack of sunshine. But I had a little bit of a challenge. I've referred to my challenges as speed bumps in the past, where I'm challenged by something that happened and I have an emotional reaction and I struggle to get beyond my reaction and process my emotions pertaining to whatever the instigating or triggering event is that happens. And it is applicable to the topic of forgiveness today, because I had mentioned in my comment on this other vlogger's short that I had forgiven my father for choosing to put his needs and his wants and his comforts above everyone else in our household in my family of origin growing up. I am one of 6 children, and my parents stayed married until just shy of their 40th wedding anniversary. And throughout my childhood, throughout my teen years, throughout my existence in that household, it has always been understood that my dad has the say, that his needs and comforts were the priority, and his planning and his schedule and everything was his way or the highway. There was no discussion about others' needs. There was no compromise. There was no understanding amongst us about maybe whose needs were more important or why we felt that way, or any compromise or any teamwork or anything like that. It was a dictatorship in my house when I was growing up. So there's been a lot of abuse, a lot of traumatic events, a lot of memories, a lot of hurt from my past that I've had to process over the last couple of years. I started therapy in June of 2020, and I graduated, so to speak, in November of 2021. So just over a year ago, and have since been on this road to wellness and this path to healing, a journey that I've said multiple times in my videos will probably never end, because I'm always focused on rising above and being better than, and healing and adapting and changing whatever faults or weaknesses of mine that hurt or harm or take away from others, in order to be mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually well and healthy myself, and have healthy relationships. Now, forgiveness was one of those things that came about quite by accident. It wasn't something I planned. It was something I was kind of pleasantly surprised by, and kind of worked its way into my thoughts and into my heart very gradually over the course of the last couple of months. And before I knew it, before I really had any awareness, I got to the point where I was like, wow, I forgive my parents and my siblings for their past hurts and abuses towards me or of me. And so I was able to confidently say in my original comment to this other vlogger that I've forgiven my dad for his choices when he was raising us, which hurt me, harmed me a great deal. And the response from the other viewer was to me, to my comment, and she said, you don't have to forgive. He made the choice. And I appreciate that comment so much because it's caused me more thought and more speculation over my statement that I've forgiven my dad and my family. And the reason it has is because I found myself realizing, well, of course I don't have to. Nobody has to forgive. And it's not for everybody. Forgiveness is not the best option in some situations. So I think what it all boils down to is, how do we define forgiveness? What does it mean for us individually? And I found myself responding to her that I recognize I don't need to forgive my dad. And I think I was already aware of that and really didn't need her to say that to me. But I appreciated the fact that she said that, because she might be someone who is in a situation where it's not good for her. It's not the best option for her to forgive, because sometimes remembering and holding on to a certain extent, to a certain degree, holding on to the hurts from the past help us remember that we cannot change others and that we need to place healthy boundaries, and that some people we just need to stay completely away from. So, as I mentioned, forgiveness may not be the best choice for everyone. And in her case, it might be why she was inspired to write that response to my comment. And I appreciated that. But it got me thinking about, well, what is forgiveness? Like, how did I find myself in this place where I could confidently say I forgave my dad and my family? And I realized that it was something that happened so gradually over time that I didn't even realize I was working towards that goal. It certainly wasn't a conscious goal that I had in mind to get to a point where I could forgive my family. What it was for me was a discovery that, wow, I really had been striving for, working towards peace in my heart and in my soul, and joy, in embracing joy and embracing peace and good relationships and the desire of having people close to me that wanted the best for me and were not critical of me or condemning of me or judgmental of me, but built me up and made me feel good about myself and believed in me and had faith in me and trusted me and loved the qualities about myself that I love about myself. And so forgiveness for me came about, like I said, gradually, but it was one of these things where once I realized I had gotten to the point where I could say, wow, I forgive my dad and my family, it was a conscious decision and is a conscious decision moving forward, effective the moment I realized that I could make that statement, for the rest of my life or the rest of their lives, because it takes work. It's forgiveness is one of those things that is not, rip the Band-Aid off and it's done and over with. It is a constant moving wheel, and it's a constant conscientious decision and effort or choice to not, number one, not let the past dictate or impact your decisions and your behaviors and your choices about being healthy anymore, or doing what you know is right. And also, it's a conscientious effort to not be a hypocrite and behave in the same manner back towards the perpetrators as they've behaved towards you, to rise above and be better than they have been. And thirdly, it is a conscious effort to accept them for who they are, faults and all, abuse and all, toxic traits and behaviors and choices and decisions and all, and actions, because they have made that choice. They have either decided that it's too difficult or too painful to become aware and process their own pasts and recognize their own unhealthy behaviors and choices that harm others, including themselves, or they've unconsciously decided to do it because they don't want to hear that their actions or behaviors or choices have harmed others when others bring it to their attention, as I have. And it is codependent to want to think or to desire or to believe that you can change someone else. You can hope for it. You can want it. You can desire and hope that they will change or that they'll wake up or that they'll choose to be better. But it's not the sort of thing that we should expect. It's not the sort of thing that we should depend on or put effort into changing. Now, if by chance our ability to heal ourselves and get better and be better and love and forgive invites change in others, that's a beautiful thing. And I personally think that it's very important to make that distinction between loving and forgiving others while maintaining healthy boundaries and healthy relationships and healthy distances from toxic people, and enabling them and excusing their behaviors or characteristics or choices. We can work on that sort of thing every day with every sort of interaction that we have with toxic people, whether they be people that we still have relationships with, even if they're distant relationships, or whether we've completely cut out the previous toxic people and we're developing new relationships with people. The whole key, I think, revolves around awareness and being in tune with our own feelings and emotions and understanding why we're reacting the way we are and what it means and what perhaps feelings are being triggered. Perhaps you might have remembered this from a prior video where I told you about the original reason that I went to see a counselor in the first place is because a year had passed since that triggering work experience that brought all of this past of mine and my toxic family and the abuse I suffered to light, to my awareness, to my consciousness, and then spent a couple of years processing it. But the reason that I originally sought a counselor was because I had been gone from that job for a year and I still was angry and bitter and hurt and dealing with being re-injured and re-hurt and re-angered by the interactions with the people that I worked with there. But I didn't realize that at the time. I had originally went to the counselor and said, why am I still carrying these feelings? This is why. This is why. You know, and this is a lot of times why certain therapists will advise cutoffs, because you continue to re-injure yourself when you are around unhealthy people, and the pain and injuries from the past keep resurfacing, and the same or similar behaviors are repetitive. And so you're basically, it's self-harm. You're re-injuring these wounds that you're trying to heal, these mental and emotional and spiritual wounds that you've already worked towards healing. You're re-injuring them. So cutoffs sometimes are the best option. When I originally went to the counselor is because I couldn't understand why I was still carrying this pain and this hurt and this bitterness a year later after leaving that job. And I found, even though I began unpacking my past and began processing the feelings regarding my childhood and the abuse and the toxicity of my family, I found that I was still carrying bitterness and hurt and anger towards my family in the present day, not right now, but like about 6 months ago, I realized that. And I didn't want to carry that bitterness towards my family anymore. I didn't want to carry that hurt. I didn't want it to be a part of me anymore. I had been doing so well with my healing process that I was really bothered by the fact that on a pretty regular basis, weekly or monthly, I was still finding myself being hurt about various things. I was like, my gosh, I got to get to the point, I'm not having peace anymore. When I'm away from my family and I don't have communication with my family, there seems to be a lot of joy in my life, a lot of peace, and a focus on gratitude and a focus on doing for others. And doing for my husband and my children. And so I kind of subconsciously became aware that, man, maybe it's the same situation as with that job. So forgiveness for me has very much meant not just accepting them and their toxic traits and all, and their condemnation and their judgment and their appearance of love of violence and lack of graciousness and humility and their big egos, accepting those truths about them, but also letting go of the past hurts, letting go of the bitterness, because I'm recognizing that none of it was my fault. I was completely ignorant. I was the victim, and coming to peace with that. Being okay with that, being okay with the fact that I was an innocent victim and I didn't know any better, and that my siblings didn't know any better either, because my parents raised us that way. They raised us to behave that way, and simultaneously recognizing that I also was like that up until a couple years ago. By choosing consciously forgiveness, I'm not only accepting of my family and the way they are, I'm also accepting of me, and choosing to be healthy, choosing to not let their toxicity or their poor behaviors or their choices to affect me, to infiltrate my soul, to get a reaction out of me. Forgiveness is a conscious choice, and it takes work. It's not, like I said, it's not a Band-Aid that you just rip off and it's done and over with. It's an awareness. It's a level of consciousness where you just let go of the past, because it can no longer control you. It can no longer bring you down, because as of this moment in time, it's about looking forward. It's about looking towards a healthy mental well-being, a healthy spiritual well-being, a healthy physical well-being, a healthy, emotional well-being. And I really desired peace. I really did. I didn't want to linger anymore on emotional reactions and hurts and anger over things that I could not control, over their decisions, their words, their choices, their actions. And so every day it's this conscious, active choice of mine, forgiveness is, to not let them upset me. And that's what it has meant to me. And the girl that responded to my comment and said, I don't have to forgive my dad, he made the choice, blah, blah, blah. She is right. Forgiveness is not a prerequisite for healing. It's not a requirement. So we shouldn't feel like that. We shouldn't put that kind of pressure on ourselves. However, for me at least, it has been the right thing to do. And I have noticed an incredible improvement in my own well-being by choosing forgiveness, by choosing that peace, by choosing to let go of the anger and not be affected or swayed by anything anyone else says or does. It has no bearing on me. I choose to be happy. I choose to be grateful. I choose to trust those people who are close to me that are good for me and good for my spirit. I said I was going to mention to you an example of what has happened recently. And what it was, try to make a long story short. I have two brothers who live about 1,500 miles away from where I live with the rest of my family of origin. We live in an area that experiences 4 seasons, and it is winter right now, as you can see. And my two of my brothers, who live about 200 or 300 miles apart, live in an entirely different state. They live on the other side of the US. And both of them came back to the area where the rest of the family lives for the holidays. And, it's starting to rain a little bit, so I've got to take cover under a tree. Maybe multiple trees here. And take cover a little bit. So my two brothers came into town, and I did not know that the one brother who I have not had contact with for quite a while, I did not know that he was coming into town. But I don't take that personally. I don't take that as a negative thing, because oftentimes my brothers will fly in and surprise the family. That has happened several times over the last decade. And so I don't take it personally, and I'm not offended by the fact that I didn't know the one brother was coming. But we got a huge blizzard over the course of Christmas, a lot of inclement weather, and a lot of areas got blizzards and just wacky weather, like a lot of flights canceled and treacherous travel conditions. And in the area where I live, we were one of the places that were affected by bad weather and blizzard conditions. You would never know it based on what you're seeing in the background, I'm sure, because we've had a warming trend and a lot of that snow from the blizzard has melted. But over the course of the week leading up to Christmas, my sister had texted that she was going to host a Christmas Eve gathering for my family at her house, which is about 40 minutes from where I live. And as word of the storm advanced, I sent her a text RSVPing saying, we're probably not gonna chance or risk going out on Christmas Eve to your house, because they also live in a very rural area, a very hilly area, and we didn't want to take that risk. And they were talking about winds and the risk of losing power and all this other stuff. So we just felt it was best if we would be at home and not risk going out. So on Christmas Eve day, I think it was in the afternoon at some point in time, I sent my sister a text and said, Merry Christmas, hope you're having a great day. And she sent a response back to me saying that they were having lots of fun and socializing and baking and stuff like that. And I thought, oh, so everybody gathered still, even though there's a blizzard roaring outside. And I was like, that's their choice, And then I get a text from one of my brothers, the one I didn't know was coming into town. And he sent a selfie of himself and the rest of my family gathering at my sister's on Christmas Eve in the middle of this blizzard. And I thought, wow, that's really phenomenal that everybody went out there and this blizzard. Well, then I said, Merry Christmas. That's awesome. I knew you guys were coming into town. And so basically just kind of let it go. And then on Christmas Eve, as the night wore on, there were reports from all over, like hundreds of miles away from where I live, including and up to and including the area right where I live, where people were getting stuck because of drifts and the road and the blowing snow, and they were abandoning their cars and the plows couldn't get through, and the counties and the cities were just abandoning plowing efforts on any side roads or rural roads because they needed to keep up with, and they couldn't keep up with the main highways for emergencies. And there were fires, and it was just a major storm for 2 days. Christmas Eve and Christmas Day were just significant storms. If you watch the news, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And I couldn't believe that my family was possibly contributing to this melee out there in the blizzard. And I thought, well, it's their choice. But then I thought, if they get into an accident or kill someone else, or they have to abandon a vehicle and a plow can't get through, way to contribute to the problem. I was kind of fighting feelings of resentment about their decisions and their choices. But then everything went off without a hitch. And as the week wore on, I had mentioned to my family that I was off work between Christmas and New Year's. And so I kind of was like hoping or expecting that I would at least see my brothers since they were in town, or get together with the family or something. And now that the blizzard had passed and the mild weather set in, I kind of reached out to a couple members of my family and said, hey, want to go walking? Want to go to the park? And one of my nephews had been throwing up the day after Christmas or the night of Christmas. I can't remember when he was throwing up. But then for the day after Christmas, we kind of wanted to stay away just in case, he had some sort of, severe bug. And as it turns out, his germ passed quickly. By Tuesday, I think his fever was gone. So we were like, okay, we can get together. Let us know what's going on. And we never heard from anybody. I reached out to them and said, want to go hiking? I'm going to be out at this park. And there was no effort made. I finally heard from one of my brothers who said, we're gathering on New Year's Eve. Your family's invited for a meal, blah, blah, blah. We'll do games and stuff like that. And we decided to go. And that day I texted my two brothers and said, hey, just wanted to check in and make sure everybody's still healthy and before we gather. And my one brother said, well, you don't need to worry about me. I'm not in town anymore. And the other brother was like, yep, we're healthy. All's well. So we did gather, and it went off fairly well. My mom contributed a couple underhanded, poking, antagonistic type comments towards me. But we were only there for a couple of hours, and I was able to kind of just blow it off. There were a couple things she said that I didn't, she got a rise out of me, but I didn't yell at her or lash out or anything. I was able to keep my head about me, but it still ate me up inside that she made those comments. And then after we left, I just got busy with the rest of our New Year's, and we gathered as a family, just, my family. And I have since been thinking about, I wish I could have seen my brothers when they were in town. I didn't even know that the one was leaving, and what the heck, And it dawned on me, and it took me a while. It took me almost an entire day to process everything that happened. And the interesting point about this is not a lot happened. Remember, the only time we actually gathered was on New Year's Eve. And so it's significant, in my opinion, that it took me so long to process and get to the point where I was like, wow, nobody really cared to see me and my family. Nobody really seemed interested in trying to kind of keep some sort of relationship. Nobody seemed to really care or respect that I had placed boundaries, that we weren't going to drive in a blizzard and we wanted everybody to be healthy. And so I was reminded recently of all these different things where I was like, oh my gosh, why do I care so much about the fact that the one brother left the area and never even tried to see me or my family? And he's one of those that I have reached out to and said Happy Thanksgiving, and have tried to kind of maintain a decent level of relationship, but at a distance. He's one of the three that I have put stricter boundaries in place with. And it was like a wake-up call to me to have him travel 1,800 miles or 1,500 miles to his hometown, where I'm 10 minutes from where he was staying and not see him at all. And I was starting to feel bad about that. I have been dealing with the emotions of feeling like nobody wants to see me and my family, feeling like I'm trying to put my best foot forward and have relationships with you, but there will be boundaries, and feeling hurt all over again and feeling frustrated and angry and fearful about the fact that I put these boundaries in place. I don't shout it from the rooftops. I don't force it. I just say, hey, we're not going to drive out in a blizzard, rain check type thing. And them having the attitude that, well, if you're not going to, come out in a blizzard and meet us, on our terms, then we're not going to see you. And that's how I was feeling. That's how I've been feeling. And not recognizing that that's okay. That's totally okay. I felt myself hit a speed bump. That's what I was talking about with a speed bump, where all of these things were happening over the course of the week between Christmas and New Year's, where I was like finding myself caring, finding myself wanting, finding myself desiring, and doing the work to try to have relationships with healthy boundaries with my family members, and realizing that I'm failing miserably and going above and beyond like I always have done. And falling into that trap where I'm not just letting go and not caring and not being upset about it either, and not being hurt about it. Just forgiving them for who they are and loving them for who they are, and just not caring, because that is within my control. The not caring, the not worrying, and the not trying, the not going above and beyond to try to make things work. So there are definite clear signs for me that I still need work. And that's why I say that I'm always a work in progress and will always be working on healing, because these things come up. And I have that reminder that healing is an ever-changing lifetime commitment, just like forgiveness. So that's what transpired between Christmas and New Year's. And you can see that it was a struggle for me to kind of process all that. But hopefully you can see why I say that forgiveness is a conscious choice and takes effort every day, and it's not like a Band-Aid you just rip off and it's done and over with. It is something that you have to work on. And again, I want to reiterate that, yes, forgiveness is not for everyone. Sometimes the trauma that someone has been through is so severe and so great that forgiveness just simply is not an option. For me, and hopefully for you, forgiveness has meant accepting my family for who they are and what they are, and not allowing who they are to injure me or hurt me or anger me anymore, to essentially not care. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you. Hopefully you're not walking through these same shoes. But like I said, forgiveness is something that probably means something different to everyone. But for me, it has meant letting go, accepting and letting go, because I choose peace. I choose joy, and I choose gratitude and love. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining me today on this beautiful, albeit cloudy, winter day. And I hope you guys are taking care of yourself. Until next time, thanks for joining Whole Wellness with Ann. Bye.